The 2012 NBA Draft was held on June 28, 2012, at Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. The draft started at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and was broadcast in the United States on ESPN. In this draft, National Basketball Association teams took turns selecting amateur U.S. college basketball players and other eligible players, including international players. This draft marked the first time that the first two players selected were from the same school. It also set a record of having 6 players from one school being selected in the 2 rounds of the draft, and was the first draft to have the first 3 selections be college freshmen, all from the same conference, the Southeastern Conference. Of the players drafted, 30 are forwards, 21 are guards, and 9 are centers. The 2012 NBA Draft marked the first appearance of the Brooklyn Nets. This draft also marks the last draft appearance for the New Orleans Hornets. After the 2012-13 season, the franchise was renamed as the New Orleans Pelicans. New Orleans made their first draft appearance as the Pelicans in 2013. Eligibility rules. The draft was conducted under the eligibility rules established in the league's now expired 2005 collective bargaining agreement with its players' union. The CBA that ended the 2011 lockout instituted no immediate changes to the draft, but called for a committee of owners and players to discuss future changes. As of 2011, the basic eligibility rules for the draft are listed below. All drafted players must be at least 19 years old during the calendar year of the draft. In terms of dates, players eligible for the 2012 draft must be born on or before December 31, 1993. Any player who is not an international player, as defined in the CBA, must be at least 1 year removed from the graduation of his high school class. The CBA defines international players as players who permanently resided outside the U.S. for 3 years prior to the draft, did not complete high school in the U.S., and have never enrolled at a U.S. college or university. The basic requirement for automatic eligibility for a U.S. player is the completion of his college eligibility. Players who meet the CBA definition of international players are automatically eligible if their 22nd birthday falls during or before the calendar year of the draft. U.S. players who were at least 1 year removed from their high school graduation and have played minor league basketball with a team outside the NBA are also automatically eligible. A player who is not automatically eligible must declare his eligibility for the draft by notifying the NBA offices in writing no later than 60 days before the draft. For the 2012 draft, this date fell on April 29. Under NCAA rules, players will only have until April 10 to withdraw from the draft and maintain their college eligibility. A player who is hired an agent will forfeit his remaining college eligibility, regardless of whether he is drafted. Also, while the CBA allows a player to withdraw from the draft twice, the NCAA mandates that a player who is declared twice loses his college eligibility. Entrance, early entrance. On May 3, 2012, the league announced a list of 67 early entry candidates, which consists of 50 collegiate players and 17 international players. At the withdrawal deadline, 11 early entry candidates withdrew from the draft, leaving 49 collegiate players and 7 international players as the early entry candidates for the draft. College underclassmen, all players are Americans except as indicated. International players, automatically eligible entrants. This list is intended to include only players who qualify for automatic eligibility despite not meeting the standard criteria reaching age 22 during the calendar year of the draft for players who qualify as international under the CBA, or being 4 years removed from the graduation of their high school class if they do not qualify as international. The signing of a contract with a professional basketball team in a league other than the NBA, combined with rendering services under that contract, may trigger automatic eligibility. The criterion for eligibility differs slightly depending on whether or not the player is international. For international players, the contract must be with a non-NBA team within the United States. For non-international players, the contract may be with any team outside of the NBA in any country. Citizenship is not a criterion for determining whether a player is international under the CBA. While the criteria have been discussed elsewhere in this article, they will be repeated here to provide further context. For a player to be international under the CBA, he must meet all of the following criteria: resident outside the U.S. for at least 3 years at the time of the draft. Did not complete basketball eligibility at a U.S. high school. Never enrolled at a U.S. college or university. Draft lottery. The first 14 picks in the draft belong to teams that miss the playoffs. The order was determined through a lottery. The lottery determined the 3 teams that will obtain the first 3 picks on the draft. The remaining first-round picks and the second-round picks were assigned to teams in reverse order of their win-loss record in the previous season. The lottery was held on May 30, 2012 in the Disney ABC Times Square studio in New York City. The New Orleans Hornets won the rights to the first overall selection with a 13.7% chance to win. The Hornets were a league-owned team at the time, leading to continued conspiracy theories about the lottery process. The Charlotte Bobcats, who had the worst record and the biggest chance to win a lottery, won the second overall pick. Below were the chances for each team to get specific picks in the 2012 draft lottery, rounded to 3 decimal places. A1, a Brooklyn Nets pick was conveyed to the Portland Trail Blazers. A2, a Minnesota Timberwolves pick was conveyed to the New Orleans Hornets via the Los Angeles Clippers. Invited attendees. The NBA annually invites 10 to 15 players to sit in the so-called Green Room, a special room set aside at the draft site for the invited players plus their families and agents. This season, the following players were invited. All players represented the United States of America. Draft. Notable undrafted players. These players were not selected in the 2012 NBA draft but have played at least one game in the NBA. Trades involving draft picks. Pre-draft trades. Prior to the day of the draft, the following trades were made and resulted in exchanges of draft picks between the teams. Draft day trades. The following trades involving drafted players were made on the day of the draft. References. External links. 2012 NBA Draft official site, 2012 NBA Draft at ESPN, 1.